Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Spirit School. This is another episode where I am sharing one of the incredible people who I have had the pleasure of meeting through the Spirit School collective community. Today, I am inviting in Leilani from Hawaii. How are you doing, Leilani?
Good. Thank you so much for having me, Danielle. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so excited you're here. We first met via the collective in 2021. I know that you have been active in Spirit School developing through so many of the different programs and offerings that we've had from business and trance, mediumship. And, you've been a core leader in the collective. You were the first host of the Collaboration Cafe. You have been leading that for a couple years. And I know that community has been something that's been really important to you. So thank you for all your work that you're doing there. I also know you as somebody who has like a heart of gold. I've seen you transition from mediumship going into some beautiful medical intuitive work that was really impactful. And then now heading into some breath work. So we're going to get to know you and your journey here. But I also know you as a mom of young children as well. I know that that's something that we also share about each other. So I'm just kind of curious if you want to introduce yourself a little bit to the Spirit School audience and like what is Leilani? Where do you live? How do you love to show up in the world? How do you love to introduce yourself?
Wow. Thank you so much for that introduction. And yes, I'm a mama. I have two little girls and they are my life. So I say that I have a life first business because my children and my home and my family come first. And that's really important for me. And so outside of my children, I guess I'm a medium, I'm a spirit communicator, I'm a guide, I'm a mentor, I'm a light worker. I do a lot of energy work and now I'm diving into breath work and that's been super trans transformational for me in my own healing journey and just the spaces that I'm able to create for other people now. And yeah, I live in Maui, I live in Hawaii. So we just had the 8-year mark of the wildfires that happened here on Maui. And yeah, there it seemed like there was a lot of stuff about like triggers and fires and like a lot of people I know and that I'm close with that have been impacted by that. So when I got into wanting to do breath work, it was because I needed to have that trauma informed foundation. And so the program that I went with is trauma informed breath work facilitation. And that just, it helped me figure out what my own traumas were, even, because I know I have a lot of trauma. We all have trauma. It's just a matter of like, is it it doesn't really matter. We all experience trauma. So it's not something I think we need to pay too much attention to. It's like building the relationship with those emotions, building the relationships with how we process everything. And so that's what I felt like I needed some extra support in, building that relationship with myself. And that's how I got into that. And that's how I made kind of the transition.
Yeah, and I really appreciate hearing that background origin story around that because you're in the collective and you were there during the Maui wildfires and you were front line. You were letting people stay at your place. You were delivering food and supplies to people that were impacted in the front lines. And you also have two young children and a lot to take care of. And one of the notes I have is here for you is you have a heart of gold.
Oh,
Like
thank you.
Leilani does have a heart of gold. And so, that must have been a really troubling time. And so the breath work came in as a way for you to kind of like manage all that stuff that was coming up. And were you a little bit blown away about how impactful it was for you? Because when I think about like hearing even just the few yoga classes I go to and they're like, breathe, I'm like, I haven't forgotten how to breathe. I would be dead if I forgot how to breathe. But I know now through doing some breath work stuff myself that it's barely touching the surface. So let me know
Mhm.
how that actually applied during that crazy time of your life and how else did you stay well?
Yeah, I have to be honest, I wasn't managing it very well. Like I think I hit in January, I hit rock bottom emotionally. And I went and got traditional therapy. I've been in and out of therapy since I was like 14, 15 years old. I used to have panic attacks when I was a teenager, partially because spirits were communicating with me and I didn't know how to deal with that.
Yeah.
But so I remember one of the techniques was breath work, and not even breath work. It was like, here's a paper bag. When you have a panic attack, blow into the bag. And I remember like having a panic attack in classrooms or like walking through campus, and I didn't want to pull out a paper bag, and I had it in my backpack and I was too scared. So in January, when I kind of had this kind of low in my life, I went and got therapy, and it ended up turning to be a nightmare, Danielle. Like the therapist, I sought out a therapist who was intuitive. That was like, is there a therapist who is like spiritual, intuitive? And so I found this therapist, and he was like, "Oh, I'm very intuitive." And I never disclosed like I am a medium or any of that sort of stuff to my therapist. I keep a lot of that stuff to me in the outside world. Like if you know me, I won't ever tell you I'm a medium or anything like this and like my real like day-to-day life. But my therapist, he was very much like, I'm an intuitive. I communicate with spirit. And I'm like, okay, well, let's see what this guy's about. And I was really asking him for like the tools. Can you give me the tools like to build a relationship with my emotions? Because I had a meltdown and I need to process that. And I really wanted someone to hold space to let me express what it was that I was feeling and moving through. And instead of him being like, oh, okay, like I'm going to create that space for you, he started telling me that I needed to manifest like leaving my husband. And he even at one point like told me to grab out a piece of paper and a pen and to like write out that I want to have a different experience with somebody else. And I was like, wait a minute, this is like, and my best friend, she's a therapist. So I called her and I told her what was happening. And she's like, no, you need to report him. You need to, that's not right. And then he started calling me. And so late at night. And so it was like crossing, like there was like, it was, I didn't even tell my husband what was going on because I didn't want him, like
Yeah.
to get pissed at the whole situation. But I ended up having to break that off. And then I was like, this feeling like there's something wrong with me. Like I can't have anybody like it was almost like I was codependent also. Like I was like trying to get someone to tell me how to fix my relationship with myself and how to what I should feel or how to move through things that is like a healthy way of moving through stuff.
Mhm.
And I just felt like it wasn't therapy. And so I remember laying in bed one day and I was like, I'm so overwhelmed. And I'm just like, I don't know what is going to help me. And I heard very clearly say, Leilani, just breathe, just breathe.
Mhm.
And I reflect on that moment because I was like, okay, I just need to connect in with my breath. I just need to find my center and just allow that just to be like meet those uncomfortable feelings with love and just breathe into it and just allow it to melt away. And so I was like, okay, okay. And then I work with different mentors on various things. And one of the mentors that I was working with at the time, and this was like in January, that same week, she brought a breathwork facilitator into her program and guided us through breathwork. And it was unlike any other experience I have had because I've done yoga breath work and I've always felt like I was being popped like out of my window of tolerance. Like I'm like hyperventilating. Like this is so much. This is too much to keep up with. Like I can't do this. Like this isn't for me. And in the way she was approaching breath was like, we are our highest authority. Like it is for us to take like as wide and as deep, and if you need to stop, stop. If you don't like the breath pattern, do a different breath. And so it was like she was permissioning me
Mhm.
to allow me to do what I really needed in those moments. And so at the end of the session she was like, I teach, I facilitate, I have a certification for people who are interested in learning and facilitating breath work. And I was like, okay, I need to do this. This is like what's been what's being asked of me. It was like a full body pull yes, like, this is my thing.
Yeah. And I imagine, and I'm so sorry you had that experience with your therapist. I'm wondering if they were like certified therapists, do you have a governing body you could go to? Because I highly do recommend that. And I think, when I run things like the declaration that's happening now, it's exactly because of stories like this. And I've heard stories like this. And, I even recently, just in the past month, went to a healer that told me my ancestors were mad at me. Like, what am I
Yeah.
supposed to do with that information? You know what I mean? Like, that could be really triggering for somebody who doesn't know better, know their higher authority. But I imagine going from a really spiritually abusive situation, essentially, to meeting somebody who identifies as a trauma informed breath work facilitator would have been very appealing. So do you think I don't know, do you sense that there would have been divinity between those things happening so close at the same time in this passion? Because I've heard you mention it a few times in the collective. You're really passionate about that trauma informed lens and practice as well.
Well, I've served on boards, and this is why I felt very connected to you, Danielle, because I was like, we have a lot of similarities. So I was on the board of directors for early childhood development, Department of Health stuff. And then when the fires happened, I was like, and I was saying this in 2020, I was like, we need to have parent leaders and we need to have people in these spaces trauma informed. And so I kept preaching to the Department of Health, like, let's get training on trauma informed. And then, especially when the fires happened in 2020, there was a big training that a lot of the certified or licensed therapists in the United States have to take. So I was able to take that program, that certification on like like don't ask people to relive that traumatic experience. And my husband, I call him Mr. Aloha because he talks to everyone. And this past week, he was like asking people to relive their experience. And I was like, no, come over here right now. Like, don't do that. You are creating trauma by asking them to relive that experience. And I think I wouldn't have known that if I didn't do that training. And so that training, I feel like across the board, like a lot of people just need to have some like awareness and just expect everyone has trauma, right? Because we all
Yeah.
go through things.
So I love that you bring that into the
Yeah.
space. And that is one of the bigger critiques I've heard about the, way breath work is sometimes used in larger group settings. And my first breath work experience happened in 2020, and it was online with other people. And it was a very intense situation, and they're taking us through a guided visualization, and like it's the kind of breath work that makes you dizzy. It was almost like they were trying to make you relive a psychedelic-ish kind of
Yeah.
experience. And there was a lot of dissent after that. There was a lot of people saying that wasn't safe. Like, I don't know any breathwork facilitator that would do that in a group that size in this way without being able to hold space or integrate. But I also got a really powerful experience out of it, and I loved it. But I have to say that you are someone who has been getting me more interested in it again. And I've been seeing a lot of our collective members do really public shout outs for the sessions that they're having with you. So I've never had a one-on-one breath work experience. Like, what does that look like for somebody?
So I do groups and I do one-on-one sessions, and my group sessions are small group because I want to make sure that I'm able to attune to everyone's energy.
Mhm.
And I'm really trying to like meet the need of each person there in that group setting. I kind of hold the container for healing to happen. And so the type of breath work, and I'm someone who, again, I've been popped in and out of my window of tolerance. Like I have so much trauma in my own body. It's so hard for me to close my eyes, even when I'm connecting in with spirit. And people are like, oh, you always keep your eyes open. I'm like, I can't close my eyes. Like, and so a lot of it has to do, for me anyways, it's like the language. Like, I invite you to close your eyes if that feels right for you, or have a soft gaze. And so I'm very much like, I titrate. It's like a slow drip
Hmm.
in with breath work, because if I'm just like pushing someone through like a fast, like deep, like super active breath, that doesn't mean they're going to have transformation. That actually can create more trauma in someone's system. And so, because I have a sensitive system, because I consider myself a highly sensitive person, I
Mhm.
really have like a gentle more nurturing, like it's like breath awareness, like noticing what your breath is doing at first. And then if you can just expand on that. And
Yeah.
I do offer several different breath patterns for people who want to like bring more energy in the body or kind of like rest in the body. So there's different techniques and patterns that I've learned over time. Sorry, can you hear that? There's a fire truck.
No,
Okay.
we're all good.
So it's for me, it's really about titration and just letting people know that they're their highest authority, but also like their body is super intelligent and it wants to heal, it wants to let go, it wants to create that emotional intimacy with you. Like your
Yeah.
body wants that for you, for your soul, for your spirit. So it's really just allowing, like I hold space for people to really drop in and allow themselves to kind of move through whatever they're feeling in that moment. And a lot of it can be like emotional and physical stuff.
Mhm.
But because I have the background in Reiki, I've been Reiki like attuned master level, and I've done like quantum Reiki. And so I really bring in elements of like energy healing into my sessions. And because I'm psychic, because I am highly intuitive, like what is happening in the person that I'm working with's body, I'm able to move that energy. I'm able to pull the energy and kind of like help guide them, facilitate that, guide it through out of their body. And so a lot of the people in my sessions, and it kind of blows me away, is like, oh, I was having like a really bad neck pain and like it's not there anymore, or I had a migraine and it's gone, or I had this hip thing, or this wrist thing. It can be anything. And so a lot of that is like a lot of the feedback that I'm getting from people when I work with them one on one. It's like I can feel the healing that's taking place, but also I've had people like tell me things like their heart score, like they feel like it really is like building the capacity to
Mm.
hold more in the body. And so it's very gentle. I work up with people. So it's like after so many sessions, and then I feel like they can trust me, and then we can go deeper, and then we can go longer and expand more into the breath. But
Yeah.
I really like to build that trusting relationship with people that I work with and kind of like build from there.
Yeah. No, that sounds absolutely incredible. And like I say, I've heard nothing but incredible things about it. As I was going through really stressful times in the past like year and a half, you're privy to a lot of those kind of details. Breathwork is something that continuously has been recommended to me as something to restore balance. And so when I'm looking at spiritual practices that can help me as a light worker, and I'm curious about your experience with learning about breath at the time where you were also going through some stressful situations, did you find it to be restorative? Did you find it to be a way to preserve or restore, or what is the overall like benefit of it you know
Yeah. So for me, I had a big contraction with it. Even when I had that first experience with that breathwork facilitator, I wasn't doing it. I was like, camera off. I can't do this. So I really rejected it at first. And I would say by month 3, I was like, okay, this is a habit now. I'm doing 10 minutes a day of breath work. But in the beginning, still even now, I have a hard time closing my eyes. But
yeah
I like to, so with the way we move energy in our body is through sound, through movement, and through breath. And so I will stand up, I will hum, I will shake, I will use my vocal tone to help facilitate that movement. But it felt I there was a contraction. It wasn't like this is easy, this is helping me, this is like something over time. It felt like I'm expanding my capacity to be able to not like flip out all the time, or like being overwhelmed or being anxiety. Or I can take a moment and just feel in that discomfort and be like, okay, what is my body needing? Okay, what is this emotion telling me? What is it feeling? What is it needing in this space? And building that emotional intimacy with myself, that was very uncomfortable because I one thing I learned through going through this program is that I have my attachment style, my relationships, like I have an avoidant attachment style. And so it's an unhealthy attachment style. but I think it's Dr. Levine who talks about like the relationships. She's like, this isn't a life sentence. Like we can go back and repair these relationships, but like the biggest relationship you really have to repair is the one with yourself.
Yeah.
So really, why am I avoiding these feelings? You know, like why am I suppressing this stuff? Like why can't I just like let it cry, let it express itself, let it move through me, transmute through me, and then out of me? Like, why am I holding on to it?
Yeah.
And this was the big thing when with mediumship, I have to tell you, is that when I was practicing mediumship, I felt like I was becoming a storage container of energy. And so I felt like I wasn't like the conduit, like I wasn't letting the information come through and out of me. I was holding it in me. And it was kind of like the ego saying, what is it? Like was that accurate enough? Was I good enough? Did I meet the need? And so it was like all ego. And so I would hold on to those stories like it was a story I was creating, and it's like I'm not the ego, I'm not the stories. And so letting that stuff go really helped me. And I think that was the last part I was kind of like latching onto within breath work, is like this identity part, being seen.
Yeah.
Really, breath is one of the ways we move energy throughout the body. So when you have intention with attention, when it comes to the awareness of your breath and where you place your breath, it's for me, it's really helped me clear my energy centers. So I start at the crown, and I move the breath, that awareness, to clear out all of my energy centers, and I ground that energy into the earth. And I've really like I'm not perfect, but I have a lot of energy also in that sacral area. And when you can just kind of clear it out, it kind of like opens more. I can feel it opening more and more and more and getting more cleared out. It's still, I can feel a lot of like crunchy stickiness still there, but it's a work in progress. I wouldn't say like 2 sessions, 3 sessions you're going to be completely healed, but you're going to move energy and you're going to be able to feel like a lot lighter when it comes to the body, when it comes to like how much you can take, that feeling. But the other thing, as you're talking, I was like, we only, so this idea of like possibility, right? Or possibility versus like, what is that word? When you kind of like when you kind of like use your mind to make decisions and it's based off logic. What is that word? Sorry, I'm having a brain fart right now.
No, let's have one
Um,
together. And I'm like, what word is that? Manifesting? Like that's what I'm thinking of, but
probability,
okay.
right? So it's like the thought that everything I've done in the past, like I've tried it all. That one time that I did breath work, it didn't do anything. That one time I did meditation, it do it. So you're finding evidence to kind of tell you what's going to happen in your future. You're kind of like, well, you're putting in all the numbers and you're like, based on this calculation, I am not going to heal from breath work. Okay. That's a done deal because you're in that mindset of probability and you're finding evidence. But when you look at breath work and anything in life, when you look at it from a lens of possibility, you get to create that experience. And I think of Albert Einstein. I think of all like these geniuses we have in the world or had in the world and the stuff that they created out of thin air. It wasn't because they were going back and they're like putting in the numbers and trying to make an outcome. It was because they were they're allowing themselves to experiment and to be curious and to just try something new without judging it. And I
Mm,
think breath work, like in itself, it's work, right? But you get to play with it. You get to be curious. You get to allow your intelligent body to kind of come up with some answers of why you're having a hard time letting this thing go.
mm,
Why don't you want to move it around? Why is it crunchy there? Why is it sticky there? Why is there no life there really, And so you get to kind of bring that intention in with the breath, in with the light, and find those places in your body and do that scan and just build that relationship with that piece of you.
Yeah.
and bring love to it. You don't have to judge it. You don't have to make a story around it. Just be like, what do you need? Why do you feel this way? Seeing that part of you and just experiment. And honestly, that's what I've done with mediumship. And I've really kind of like, what is it? That that probability of like, oh, this isn't possible. This isn't real. Like you kind of have to suspend disbelief in order to see like miracles happen.
Yeah, there's a beautiful quote. I mean, I heard it through John Holland, but I'm sure it originated somewhere else. But it's like, it's not, you'll see it when you believe it. It's like you'll see it when you believe it, right? It's not, I'll believe it
Yeah.
when I see it. It's I'll see it when I believe it. Like there is
Yeah.
power to that assumption behind it. So I
Mm-hmm.
really, really love that. Thank you for bringing that in. I'm excited because you're going to be bringing breathwork monthly to the collective. And this is something that we've been talking about for a couple months as I've been watching you do this training and how you've been bringing in. You can genuinely tell you're excited about it. And I've known you for quite a few years now. So that to me just ignites my heart. And because I want to learn more about breathwork and because I'm always trying to ask, like, what do I wish I had had? I'm really keen on bringing more restorative practices and like more self-care practices to like the healers and light workers like in the space. So I'm excited that you're going to be coming in monthly and doing that. What do you think people in the collective can expect with that?
I am so excited and thank you so much for allowing me to do it. I feel so honored. Honestly, I feel like I just feel like it's going to help so many people because again, traditional meditation, close your eyes, go inward. For someone who has a lot of trauma in the body, that can feel very uncomfortable. Sitting in a space for 30, 20, even 10 minutes can feel like you're about to die. And that's how I felt like. And so with breath work, it is an active meditation. And so we get to kind of activate and meet things where maybe traditional meditation is it's like the gap. We're building bridges and we're kind of like meeting the gap where I think a lot of light workers are that's kind of what's needed. And for me, when I would do mediumship or when I still do mediumship, the first thing I do is I connect in with my breath. It's breath is life. Breath is usually the first thing. I mean, we're born into the world. The first thing we do is we take a breath. And there's just like my entire life. And I feel like that's why I'm so passionate about doing breath work because my entire life has showed me evidence that this is where it was leading me, like to do this job, to be this person, to be a facilitator, a teacher when it comes to breath work.
Yeah.
And so I think it's going to help you regulate your nervous system. It's going to help you connect to the world of spirit. It's going to help you with your relationships with yourself, but with the people that you love. And it's going to expand and it's going to allow you to hold more and be able to just process more through the body.
Yeah. Can you do me a favor?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You have a podcast. Can you do some breath work on your podcast? Do you know how hard it is to find actual breath work
Yeah.
recordings? I'm like, I try to look on the podcast sphere. I'm like, just can I breathe with someone? And I
Yeah.
can't find anything. So if you would even be willing on your podcast, do you want to plug your podcast too?
Yeah. So my podcast is the Spirit Reach podcast. You can find it on any platform. And so the thing with breath work is so traditional meditation, people can turn off their cameras. I mean, I've done energy work with people who turn off their cameras, but breath work to experience the most out of it, especially working with me, I ask people to keep their camera on because I want to connect in with you. I want to see where you're at. And I think when it comes to recordings, a lot of facilitators, they feel like, well, I don't know
Yeah.
what's going to happen because there's a lot of physical, like people pass out from breath work. People have, it's called tetany, where the soft muscles contract in the hands, feet, and mouth.
Oh,
And
wow.
so there are physical things that can come up in breath work. And so guiding someone, it's kind of best practice to have that person either be like in person or like I can see you. So if you're just listening to breath work like that are recordings and you don't know like what's happening or you kind of have something physically go on with you, like nobody's going to be there for you to help, And so I have a whole thing where people have to fill out a form before they can breathe with me. And I want their emergency contact. That way, if something does happen to you, that I can call them and they can, get some help for you. Because
Yeah.
as much as I encourage people to really listen to their body, sometimes they just want to push it. They're trying to like get that transformation or get that impact in the body, and they're not listening to themselves. And it's like, oh boy, now you're in trouble. So I think that's the reason why you can't find too much just like free
That's
stuff out there.
completely explains it. It's not
Yeah.
even the free stuff. It's like,
Yeah.
I just want to try this. And I've only
Yeah.
tried in that one group thing before. So that completely answers to me why you can't just find like a breath sequence of some kind out there.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. One more thing I wanted before I ask you the final two questions of this
Hmm.
interview, but I heard a quote that really spoke to me because you had mentioned it a couple minutes ago about how you recognize now through this level of awareness with breath work that before you connect mediumistically, you enter like this breath sequence. And I want
Hmm.
you to know that that is very common in mediumship. And when you look at things like trance, it's like you can tell that, or you've even heard of different trance mediums speak to it. It's like they find their rhythm of breath. They enter almost like this hypnotic state through breath.
Hmm.
And I read this article once. I wish I could remember where it came from to quote it, but they were talking about Christian mercenaries going overseas to preach, is they
Hmm.
would call them those without breath
Hmm.
because they were preachers that would speak about holy things with before entering any kind of breath. In a lot of different cultures and religious practices and spiritual practices, there's this breath associated with it.
Even with Hawaii, they're the Kama'aina or the locals will say haole, and that word haole it can be used many ways, right? But what that word means is man without breath. And they thought the white
Covered in shivers.
yeah, they thought the white man, the people who had the pale skin, they thought they weren't living. They thought they were dead because they were so white. And so that's where that word comes from. It's man with no breath.
Wow,
Yeah.
fascinating that comes up. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to do some digging. I'm sure the algorithms will be in our favor on this one. We'll get more articles on this.
Yeah.
But Leilani, this has been really great to get to know you better. There's
Yeah.
so much I could talk to you about because you do so many things. But I'm glad that we stuck with breath on this episode. And one thing I'm asking the collective members who I'm bringing onto the podcast, because development is at the core of what we do there, and thriving in community. And we're going to be adding a lot more self-care into that space. But knowing what you know now, you know, what would you tell your day one spiritual adventure self, the one who was so keen and bright eyed, like, ooh, what's a chakra? All that fun stuff. What would you tell Leilani of that day now?
I would tell her to play more and to not take things so seriously. I know I really strived like throughout the beginning of my development was like I was practicing every single day. I was like trying to meet all those boxes, those checkpoints in my mediumship. And I wish I would have just played more and not taken things so seriously. I wish I would have just like been a little bit easier on myself because I just feel so strict in it. I don't know how to explain it. I felt very contracted and I got to do this. And, so I wish I would have played more and I wish I would have actually logged my experiences.
Hmm.
I have a very hard time of like keeping a journal and like writing it all down. So I really wish I would have logged it some way. If not writing it, I wish I would have recorded it. I wish I would have saved it in my notes or somewhere
Hmm.
because there are so many amazing experiences that people even remind me. Remember this time when you did this? And I'm just like, no, I have no recollection of that. So I wish I would have just somehow kept a journal. So I really encourage anyone who's just starting off in their development, just keep track of all those little miracles, all those amazing stories that come through in your development in the beginning, because I wish I had that.
Yeah, I feel you. I'm glad I did that because they're really great to go back to, and it's not too late. It's not too late. You can start your adventure. But okay, Leilani, thank you for coming on. Final question. How can people stay in touch with you, follow your path, look into your work? If you want to shout out your Instagram or your website or both.
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram under Mana Medium. And then also my website is manamedium.com, MANA. And then also I have the Spirit Reach podcast. I had a little bit of pod fade this year, just kind of doing the breath work,
Did
but
I? Yeah.
but I'm hopeful that I will be recording and getting back into it and sharing my story on my podcast and talking about breath work and offering breath work. So I'm going to be offering one-on-one sessions. I'm going to offer group experiences. So just follow me on Instagram and I'll share what's coming up, what's next on my Instagram or my podcast.
Awesome. Thank you, Leilani.
Thank you.